The honourable member for Battleford's Lloydminster.
The Prime Minister has lost control of spending and his cabinet. The Finance Minister promised to cap the deficit at already reckless $40 billion, but now it turns out the Prime Minister is shoving her through her own guardrail. The fake feminist Prime Minister is setting up Canada's first female finance minister to take the hit for his reckless spending so that he can then officially bring in the unelected man who has been pulling the strings. Why is the Prime Minister bullying the Finance Minister into breaking her $40 billion deficit guardrail promise and forcing her to deliver carbon tax Carney's fiscal update?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
While the Conservatives are focused on this soap opera, Parliament Hill, grapevine, gossip, Mr. Speaker, our Liberal government has been focused on the pocketbooks of Canadians. Inflation is way down. It's at 2%, and the Governor of the Bank of Canada confirmed yesterday that it's going to stay at about 2% for the next few years. Interest rates are way down. We saw another jumbo rate cut yesterday, Mr. Speaker. That means more money in the pockets of Canadians because they're going to be able to renegotiate their mortgage at a lower rate. We're going to be able to help all Canadians that have loans, and our small businesses and entrepreneurs are going to see costs going down.
The honourable member for Battleford's Lloydminster.
Canadians cannot afford this Prime Minister's fake feminism. He had the gall this week to say, and I want you to know that I am and I always will be a proud feminist. You will always have an ally in me and my government. All while working overtime behind the scene to throw Canada's first female finance minister under the bus for his reckless spending. Will the so-called feminist Prime Minister set aside his hypocrisy and admit that he is responsible for forcing the finance minister to break her $40 billion deficit promise?
The honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Speaker. I was also at the Equal Voice Gala the other night, and I heard the Prime Minister's speech. I heard him talk about all the tangible measures that we have taken as a government to advance equal rights among genders, including a gender-neutral cabinet, including $10 a day childcare, including a women's entrepreneurship strategy. I also heard the Deputy Leader of the Conservatives and her speech, which completely undermined the whole mission.
I really do apologize. I've been having trouble hearing the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary answer the question. Members really must not take the floor when others are speaking. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Speaker. I was also at the Equal Voice Gala the other night, and I truly enjoyed the Prime Minister's speech, which listed dozens of things that we have tangibly done as a government to advance gender equality, including a cabinet that has equal numbers of men and women, including $10 a day childcare, including a female entrepreneurship strategy, $500 million going out across the country to end the process of gender-based violence. Meanwhile, the Deputy Leader of the Conservatives in her speech completely undermined the whole point of equal voice, Mr. Speaker. It's very telling about what the Conservatives think about equality.
Order. The honourable member from Peterborough-Kawartha.
This fake feminist Prime Minister is determined to decimate Canadians' lives by destroying the economy, and he will throw anyone under the bus to do it, including his token finance female minister. Canadians know he's weak. They know he's lost control of his cabinet and his spending. The question is, will the first ever female finance minister have the courage to stand up to that fake feminist Prime Minister and stick to her promised $40 billion deficit?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, here's something tangible that the Leader of the Opposition could do. In the next election, he could run more women, and he could get more women in those seats. If he really wants to prove his credibility in terms of standing up for women, let me just give you some stats, Mr. Speaker. In this current House of Commons, 16.9% of the women elected sit here in the Liberal benches. How many in the Conservative benches, Mr. Speaker? 6%. That's the kind of numbers that we are talking about.
Order. Order. I'm certain all members want to hear the question from the Honourable Member. The Honourable Member from Peterborough-Kawartha.
Mr. Speaker, on the Conservative side of the House, women stand here because we're skilled and we're allowed to use our voice. Mr. Speaker, Jody Wilson-Raybould is testament to this. That is a fake Prime Minister, but that is not the point. We're not here to talk about gender. We're here to talk about the economy, and it is destroyed under that fake feminist Prime Minister. So again, if she is not a token, will she stand up to him and say, no, I will abide by my $40 billion deficit guardrail to help this economy get back on track and save Canadians' lives?
I know that all members are keen to return back to their constituencies for the Christmas break, but until that point, please, let us treat each other with respect. And that means not speaking when the Speaker is standing or when someone is recognized by the Speaker to take the floor. The Honourable Minister for Crown Indigenous Services.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that woman might feel like a token, but I never do. I earned my seat in this House of Commons, and I'm proud of it, Mr. Speaker. And you know why they don't like numbers, Mr. Speaker? Because the numbers don't speak in their favour. There are 30% of these seats taken by women, Mr. Speaker. Fully 17% of those are here over on this side. More than half of the women elected are Liberals, Mr. Speaker, and the other half are the rest of the parties combined. So they should do their job, Mr. Speaker, as parties and get more women to run.
Order! Order! The Honourable Member who is about to speak is deserving of having her voice heard. The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
The Prime Minister, who has long self-described as a feminist, starting in July and through anonymous sources, have repeatedly maligned Canada's first female finance minister by undermining her competency. This week, reports have suggested that the finance minister has been at odds with the Prime Minister, who's been bullying her to blow back her already exorbitant $40 billion deficit. And now we've got female cabinet ministers defending the Prime Minister's decision to bring in an unelected man to replace her job. Why?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister for Diversity and Inclusion.
Mr. Speaker, I always find it a bit rich when Conservatives talk about feminism, when their own leader will use hashtags on his YouTube videos to attract men who hate women. Mr. Speaker, it is anything but feminist when they bring forward backdoor legislation to ban abortion in this country, or when they all vote against increased funding to combat gender-based violence or to support survivors. Their leader doesn't care about women or equality. He only cares about himself. Shame on them, Mr. Speaker.
Order. The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Well, the fact remains, Mr. Speaker, that after months of reports that the Prime Minister wanted to turf Canada's first female finance minister, we find out today that he's in talks to put an unelected, conflict of interest-riddled man into the role. The Globe and Mail story must have really stung for every single Liberal backbencher who has carried the water of this scandal-plagued Prime Minister for years. Why wouldn't they be getting this job? So my question is this. Does the Prime Minister really think that there is nobody, no one in the elected Liberal caucus who could be the Finance Minister? Anybody? No one?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the nature of the questions coming from the opposition today speak more about their opposition to feminism than it does our commitment to feminism. But that's typical, Mr. Speaker, because actions speak louder than words in this case. When we brought forward things like the Canada Child Benefit or childcare, actual policies that help women, what did the Conservatives do? They voted against it. When we stand up for a woman's right to choose, what do the Conservatives do? They vote against it, bring in backdoor legislation to make it harder to access sexual health and reproductive rights in this country. When we work to make contraceptives free in this country, what do the Conservatives do? Stand in opposition. The real fake feminists are those folks on the other side of the Conservatives.
À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît. Order, please.